This is Andi Purewal for Boxing Social in association with Betfred. I'm joined by trainer Jamie Moore over Zoom. Jamie, firstly, how are you?
Yeah, sound mate. Been better, obviously, but as the week's gone on, the sort of dust settled a little bit. Still wake up every morning thinking, I can't believe what's happened, but the wheels are in motion now to hopefully try and start to repair some of the damage, and not even just for us, but hopefully for boxing in general moving forward as well.
Jamie, let's obviously just get straight into it there, and the reason as to why you're still kind of annoyed. Let's go back to last weekend. Jack Catterall produced a career best performance, many would agree with, against Josh Taylor. And as we saw from the outcry, most believed he had done more than enough to have become the undisputed super lightweight champion last weekend. Unfortunately, two of the judges didn't see that being the case. Go back to the fight first and foremost, Jamie. What did you make of the bout between Jack and Josh?
The bout?
Yeah.
I thought Jack was I thought he boxed fantastic. I thought he did exactly what I thought he was going to do. Certainly in the first half of the fight. As the fight went on, he got a bit scrappier. And I think a lot of the time, Southpaw v Southpaw doesn't really blend well. I thought he did early on. I thought he was fine, but I think as a bit of fatigue kicked in and frustration on both parts with each side was sort of falling in, or every time the one or the other let the backhand go, they sort of squared up and then fell. It comes to a sort of 90-degree angle. It was weird how they kept both doing the sort of same thing, but it wasn't any one or the other fault. It was just the way the styles sort of clashed. It got a little bit scrappier as it went on, but I thought for the first 8 rounds, I only had Jack dropping the 7th clearly, and I thought the second on the night was sort of nip and tuck, could have gone either way, but when I've watched it back, I still think Jack won it, but there is an argument there. It is a close round. So, but by the time we got the knockdown in the 8th round, I thought Taylor needed a knockout, and as long as there was nothing drastic happened, like Jack got put, he didn't do anything stupid and got put down a few times, I thought it was home and dry.
What was the initial game plan, Jamie? There was question marks over Jack boxing at that level simply because he had done so before. Obviously, showing on the night he's more than capable of boxing up there with anyone in the division. But what was the game plan?
Well, the game plan was to stop Taylor from doing what he's good at doing. If you can take away one of a lot of a fighter's best attributes, you're sort of halfway there. And Josh has always been fantastic pressure fighter, tempo, strength, good body puncher. But Jack Catterall's defence is massively underrated, and that's probably because he's not been involved in fights at that magnitude in the past. But that's what I said all the way through in the build-up. I was that confident in Jack's ability. I was just sort of going, listen, just wait and see. You'll see on the night what happens. And my emphasis with Jack during training camp was, you make Josh Taylor have to come and beat you. So don't go in there with a mindset, I'm going to go and try and snatch them world titles away from Josh, because that's not the way you fight. And if you do that, you'll be fighting outside your comfort zone. So why would you go into the biggest night of your career trying to fight in a style which you've never fought with before? It doesn't make sense. So I said, and your best attributes are that good. I know Josh Taylor will have so many problems trying to break you down. Like every single fighter, what gets in the ring with Jack's fighting or sparring, all say the same thing when they get out. They say it's so deceiving how difficult it is to catch him clean, and how strong he is. And And I just knew that, no matter how many times Josh said in the build-up he was taking Jack seriously, and he was, it's not that he wasn't taking him serious. It was that naturally, when you've been involved in so many big fights on the bounce, it's near enough impossible when you've just got to the mountain peak, so to speak, in his last fight, undisputed. You need a greater challenge to then have those natural nerves and endorphins. And also what comes with having a run of fighting so many unbeaten fighters is also a lot of miles on the clock. Physically, your body takes a lot of toll. And I know Josh has said, there was easy fights and stuff like that, but they can't possibly be easy fights. That's probably him just playing mind games. And I just knew that all those little factors combined, and obviously Josh was a little bit tight at the weight. You could see it on the scales. Everyone doesn't look great on the scales, but he didn't look great. And I just knew that it was going to be Jack's night. And it was, except it wasn't.
Jamie, final thing on the fight before we do come on to the fallout. Was that as good as a performance from Jack you could have expected, or better than what you believed he could have delivered?
I think you've also got to look at it from Jack's point of view. It was his first time at that level. It does take time to adjust. I think you can see better from him, without a doubt. This stuff like he's never done a 12 round at that pace, at that level, under that pressure. There's all them little factors in. So that can only make Jack Catterall a better fighter. And we all know how good Josh is. He's a phenomenal fighter. But when someone's got the attributes to counteract what you're good at, then they can make you look not as good. And I've seen people say, it wasn't a great performance by Josh. He underperformed and stuff like that. I don't think he necessarily underperformed. I think he wasn't allowed to perform the way he wanted to because of Jack's style and technique. So I think maybe watching it back, could Jack have sort of been a little bit braver and closed the show? I'm only saying that maybe now because of what's happened, because we shouldn't have had to. If you, in a boxing match, if you win rounds and you've won more rounds than the other guy, you should win the fight. So Jack was winning the fight in everyone's eyes already. So if I'd have sent him out in the 10th, 11th, 12th, and gone, you go and close this show, that's telling him to go and do something different than he's been doing for the first 9 rounds, and potentially then messing himself up. So why would I tell him to change it? If he's not, still like the old saying, if he's not broke, don't fix it. So and even those last 4 rounds, only in fact in the whole fight, only 1 round Josh Taylor out punched Jack Catterall. So I don't, I can understand. It might be a bit of frustration from people going, he's got to go out there and he's got to finish strong. He's in Scotland and stuff like that. Those shouldn't be factors. You win a fight, you win more rounds than the other guy, and you should win the fight. And we've been talking about it for far too long. And I'm hoping and praying for the sport that this is that point where people go, right, this has happened far too many times. This is on too big a scale, and we've got to do something about it.
Jamie, just before we do come on to that, what went through your mind when you heard the split decision read out by the announcer?
And my stomach turned. As soon as he heard Jack's name in that first scorecard, my stomach turned because I thought we're getting jobbed. Because he was never a split, and I thought, and then when he heard the second card so wide to Josh, I was like, please, no. And you could see it on Jack's face. Jack was thinking the same thing. And so it came to pass. I just, I felt like crying, to be honest, for him. Not initially, I was angry initially, but when Sky asked me to do the interview ringside, and I went down there, I had to really stop myself from crying for him. It was so emotional for him, because I've seen what that kid's been through for the last 2 years, playing the politics, not getting the hooker shot when he should have got it. He went and then unified against Ramirez. I understand that overrides a mandatory, but then he didn't get his shot straight away. Then Ramirez and Taylor wanted to fight for the undisputed, which we understood, but Jack was left waiting and waiting and waiting, and did the right thing for the sport, but also for himself, because then he got the opportunity to fight for all the belts. So it wasn't just one-way traffic. He wasn't trying to be the hero and go, yeah, I'm going to do the right thing for boxing. He did it because it's the right thing to do, but also he got the opportunity to fight for all the belts. And after all that stuff and all those months and months and months of me trying to keep him motivated and keep his mindset positive, going, listen, please, I understand how frustrated you are, but it'll all come good. I promise you, one day it'll all come good. And I said it to him in the ring. At the end of the fight, when the bell went and he started celebrating, I went over to him and I said, I told you it'd all be worthwhile. And he just sort of hugged me. And then he gets fucked over like that.
Jamie, after a fight, do you have any kind of access to whoever the judges are or whoever's there to represent the board at all, so you can actually have a discussion with them and ask them to explain why they thought the fight went the way that it did?
No, the judges are, it's well spoken about. The judges are well protected in that sense. No one's allowed to speak to him, interview him. So they, which is it's ludicrous, really. Tony Bellew made a great point. We've just been punched in the head for 12 rounds. So I'm talking as a fighter here, but talking past tense, I'd have just done a 12-round title fight and probably ended up a war. And then I'd have to sit ringside and do an interview with Sky, then go and do a press conference with all the BBC reporters or whatever. And then a judge who's physically not been through anything doesn't have to condone what he's just done. It doesn't sit right with me, to be honest. And I've spoke so much about this week. You feel like you're on repeat, but I've got a lot of respect for. I've been in professional boxing for over 22 years now, and these guys have been on the scene all the way through my career. I've had a lot of good nights with them as a fighter. I've had loads of good nights as a trainer, but every now and again, this happens, and then just recently, just keeps getting more often and more often. And I don't want to fall out with people, because I've got a lot of respect for them over the years. We've become, I wouldn't say friends, but you're very friendly with people, and you have a relationship. And I don't want them to feel like I'm kicking them, because it is a job and it's not a personal. I've not got any sort of vendetta against them. But if you can't get a fight, the score of a fight correct, knowing what we've just watched and seeing the backlash and the amount of people who've been around this game so long saying the same thing, the vast majority of people are saying you can only give Josh 3 or 4 rounds max. And, even if, I said this yesterday, even if you can stretch it to 6, which you can't, but even if you could stretch it to 6, then Jack still wins by a point for the knockdown. So really, if they can't read that type of fight, then maybe they shouldn't be doing the job. The scoring definitely needs addressing, and how they score, because I know what's going to happen. There's going to be an inquiry, and Rob will say something along the lines of, we've gone through it. We spoke to Ian John Lewis, and in his opinion, what he saw was Josh Taylor winning that fight. But then he doesn't have to explain technically why. It's just his opinion. And that's not good enough, because if you're going to score a fight at that magnitude, and then it's going to have the impact it's going to have had on the fighter who wins or loses, then the criteria of scoring a fight there has to be something set in stone on paper, what you go by, and then based on that, then you have your opinion. But you can't just base it on your opinion only, because then it's just, you leave it wide open for things like this to happen without anybody being answerable to it.
Jamie, where do things currently stand with the board's inquiry, investigation, whatever you want to call it, into the scoring from last weekend? We know they've spoken out about it. They said they'll look into it. And what have any of the governing bodies of the title said?
The most I know at the moment is what everyone's heard in terms of the board, that there's inquiry. I think it's Monday or Tuesday this week, and then they'll release what the findings or whatever they come to the conclusion. I think there's been an appeal lodged with the WBO for an immediate rematch. So, which, listening to Josh's interview, he won't be boxing at 140 again. So if that's the case, then Jack would box for the vacant title. So at the moment, I think that's the most we can hope for. But you know, it's not gonna. The most sickening thing from a sportsman's point of view, and knowing how you feel as a fighter, is that Jack will never have that moment ever again. You know, that moment you've waited for all your life, to hear those words for literally the biggest prize in the sport, it doesn't get any higher. To be snatched away from like that is just soul destroying. And the very least what could happen after that is he doesn't suffer financially from it. So hopefully the management team are getting stuff in place now where he gets a deal where, even though it might not be quite what he was supposed to get if he'd have got the decision, then it won't be that far off and he won't lose out, because he's got a young family. Jack Catterall's certainly one of the fighters who's doing this for the glory, for the want to be a champion. He's not doing it for financial incentives, but God, that'd be a double kick in the bollocks if he then loses out financially in the long run because of this. In an ideal world, you'd hope that a situation would unfold where they go, okay, we're going to get 3 independent judges, nothing to do with the boxing board of control, sit them down, sound off, watch the fight back, decide who won. If all 3 decide that Jack won the fight, then the verdict gets overturned. But that's never happened before. And I can't see it happening now. The other thing is, is there a potential for it to be declared a no contest? Which doesn't really change anything, but at least he doesn't have a loss on his record. But even the fact that he's got a loss on his record won't really affect him in the slightest. And in a strange way, his reputation has been enhanced through this. It was definitely his coming out party. I knew it would be. And he's 28, so he's still got a good 4 or 5 years in the game where he can be involved in some big fights. So it's not the end of the world. It's just that absolute heartbreaking moment when that last card got read out for Jack. My heart sunk for him, because everything what we planned come to fruition except that last little part, and that'll never ever change it. It's soul destroying.
Jamie, what do you believe needs to be done to address this kind of current fall, shall we say, with regards to judging and refereeing within the UK? Because it's been an ongoing theme, as you mentioned, where it seems to be happening more frequently. And unfortunately for yourselves, it happened in Jack's fight last weekend, where it's come into question once again. What needs to be done to address it?
Yeah. I think everything what I've just mentioned. So maybe the criteria that a judge is based on scoring has to be more solid, and then your opinion after that. I think it's too opinion based, and it should be more structured so that people know what they're looking at and know what they're scoring for, and then your opinions after that. I think in cases like this, when there is a decision, so if that happened, then we'd have less decisions like this occurring. Then if they're not happening as frequently, when they did happen, once they launched an inquiry, they should then have a backup plan, i.e. something like 3 independent judges not associated with a boxing board of control to sit down, view the fight, decide who won, and if it's still split, the decision stays the same. But if all 3 decide that the wrong person got the decision, it can either be overturned or it can be made a no contest. They're just a couple of little things. But so I said this yesterday in a different interview. I like Rob Smith. I've always had a lot of time for him. We've always had a good relationship. But he's in a powerful position, and with that comes a lot of responsibility. And everyone can't be wrong. And he's now probably in a position where he can sit back and go, right, should I become the person now? Should I be the pioneer who in 50 years' time will look back and go, that guy made boxing better? And it could end up globally, because, you know, when you look at safety, for instance, we head and shoulders above everybody else in this country. We set the bar for everyone in that sense, and it's fantastic. The safety in this country is second to none, and it's brilliant, and it keeps the fighters more protected than they've ever been. Maybe we should set the bar for the judging and the rest of it as well, and that's certainly, you know, take away the meeting just specifically for Jack's fight with Josh. They need to be having a meeting and sitting down and talking about saying, listen, we can't be having this now. You know, put that to one side, but let's do something to make a change. And this has been spoken about for ages as well, but there's no universal governing body for boxing. Everything's different, and I various different governing bodies what I've been involved in with title fights and stuff for my fighters. You have to go for a meeting every time after the weigh-in. You have to go and sit for half an hour, 45 minutes, and go for a rules meeting. Now, I'm a professional boxing coach I've had a trainer's license for 15 years since we're still fighting. Why do I need to sit in a rules meeting? I should know the rules of boxing. If I don't know the rules of boxing, I shouldn't have a trainer's license. But the reason we have to have a rules meeting is because there's all different rules, which is insane. So the WBC might have different rules to the IBF. And then in the context what happened last weekend, they come to an agreement on which rules will override the other one. So say there's a 3 knockdown rule for one governing body and another one might not have it. Why are all the rules not the same? It's stupid. Yeah, I mean, so I should not have to waste half an hour every single time one of my fighters is involved in a title fight to sit down for somebody to tell me what I've already been told 1,000 times, but then every now and again there's a little bit of a difference. It's crazy. There should be a one universal governing body what oversees boxing, so that they have to be held accountable for stuff like this. Because if there was, they could have a meeting after this. For instance, if someone put a complaint in, and then they go, right, okay, let's see if we agree with what they did. At this moment in time, the boxing board are doing an inquiry about themselves, and they're going to decide whether they got it wrong or not. And that's just a conflict of interest, and it can't happen like that.
Jamie, just a few more from me before I let you go. Just on the Jack front, when he stepped aside, usually when people step aside, we're used to hearing about, a potential little kind of purse, shall we say, or figure that he'd get to benefit from doing so and waiting for his opportunity. Obviously, we saw Nigel Travis come out over social media saying that wasn't the case in Jack's situation. Can you just explain that, because that was just a surprise to me to hear that he didn't actually receive anything that he would benefit from other than the guarantee of facing the winner of what back then was Taylor Ramirez.
Yeah, and technically he's right, but the deal what he got by stepping aside was much more lucrative than it would have been originally. So he didn't actually get step aside money to allow it to happen, but he did. He was also in the thingy. So technically there was everyone's right, but he was all included in the final figure, really.
Got yeah. And then also I've seen your reaction to this over social media. We've seen some horrible reports really of Josh receiving some death threats since the fight. Now, obviously, Josh has no control over any of the judging, the refereeing, whatever anybody had to be disgruntled by. But your just reaction to hearing some of that as to what Josh has had to deal with since?
Yeah, I mean, you've probably seen what I tweeted, because as soon as I got told about that, you should not be attacking people personally who have no influence on the outcome. They're in the same situation as us, but the opposite side of it. So, and who on earth starts threatening people, with death threats or physical violence about stuff like this? I understand people are frustrated, but these are real people, and as much as people get angry and try to lash out, God, nobody deserves that, especially his wife and or his fiance. It's just insane, and that's why I put it out there, because I think sometimes people get that emotionally involved. They feel like they're supporting you and your cause, and I wanted to put something out there, because if there's 20 people doing it and they read what I've put down, and you sort of might make them think. I didn't want to do something and think, oh, it's none of your business what you try to get involved with. But I just thought it was disgusting, and I thought nobody deserves that about sport. It's been a disgusting decision and stuff like that from our point of view, but it wasn't their fault. They had no influence in that whatsoever.
And final thing, Jamie, as you mentioned earlier, the expectation is for Josh to move up to 147 now. But I did see a post that he put out, he'd be happy to face Jack at 147. Granted, he won't have any world titles with him. Would that be something you guys as a team would have any interest in, or is it very much so stay at 140 and become world champion there before you did decide to, if that time comes, to move up?
Yeah, listen, it's definitely worth conversation, but don't forget I work for Jack. So at the end of the day, it would be Jack's decision. But I think going off conversations with him, that he certainly makes 140. I won't say comfortably. Nobody makes weight comfortably, but he makes it well and healthily. And he wants to be a world champion at that way. He's been there all his career. And he's definitely up for a rematch at 147 now, without a doubt. So I think, in an ideal world, now this situation sort of happened and we have to move forward, we can't go back in time. If Josh gives the titles up and moves up, then Jack would want to fight for them all if he could, but if not, at least one of them, become a world champion. And then I'm pretty sure that he'd be willing to move up then and get the rematch done. And to be fair, it then becomes a bigger fight, because Jack's a world champion in his own right then. And the rematch then becomes a little bit bigger and a bit tastier, really, as well. So, I'm a big believer in everything happens for a reason. And God, for the life of me, I can't find it at the moment for this situation. But if we can sort of look forward and look at things like that, and welterweight is a lucrative division, and in the long run, maybe the outcry about it all has helped Jack's profile because he's not been involved in big fights and stuff before. So, God, I'm just hoping that in 2-3 years' time, I can look back for him and sit there with him and, have a chat with him and go, there you go. If you connect the dots backwards, we'd have never have been at this point if we'd have not come through that sort of rough patch there. And a rematch with Josh at 147 with Jack as a world champion is a much more lucrative fight for him.
Right, Jamie, we'll leave that there now. Leave to enjoy the rest of your weekend. I appreciate doing this interview. I hope Jack's okay too. And I look forward to catching up with you soon once again. Thank you for speaking to me in Boxing Social.
Top man. Cheers, Andi.